the lane. 15, 10. Touchdown, Chargers.
What's up, guys? Welcome into a Week 5 edition of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by Matt Money Smith. Chargers' second road game in a row, trying to make it 2 in a row, get to 3-2 in Cleveland against the Browns. Money, before we get into this Cleveland matchup, let's get your thoughts on that interesting win in Houston. Looked like domination in the first half, got real interesting in the second.
Yeah, I thought, Coach in his media session on Wednesday, brought it up. So, look, we got to figure out their quarters, for whatever reason. It's both sides of the ball. Special teams, it's just kind of been a bad quarter for them. I can't remember the exact stat that I read, but as I was kind of digging into it a little bit further, it's, they're struggling in that particular frame. But let's just kind of set that aside. The start was great, and it was something we asked Coach Staley about on the radio show on Monday. How do you figure out how to bring energy? Who's responsible for bringing energy? Look, you were there, Chris. It was for all the incoming that Los Angeles takes. Houston's having issues with their football team. They love the Astros, but the Texans are really struggling right now, and that place might have been, I feel like I'm being generous if I say 40% full. It's very similar to last year, December 26th, and it was a flat atmosphere inside that stadium. They're coming off a rough loss against Jacksonville, and it's like, man, I hope this team is not flat, because they were kind of flat in that Jags game with all the injuries, and then bang. I mean, they just come out, Mack with the hit, interception, Nas, cash it in, touchdown, Everett, and it just rolled from there. I thought they played with urgency. Loved the game call. We talked about Coach Lombardi and just kind of the way the game had been called in that Jacksonville game. And, it turns out we talked about what he said to the media about what happened he thinks happened and how different it would be in that game against the Texans. He's absolutely right. I mean, you saw a ton of pre-snap motion. They recognized tendencies by the Texans to crash on play action. They set up those 2 passes out to the right flat to Ekeler, one on 4th down, one that went for a touchdown. It just was a expertly called game from Coach Lombardi. And, man, it was good to see. They really, I thought, I don't know if atone is the right word. It's not like they committed any sort of atrocity against the Jags, but they fixed, they fixed some of the issues that we discussed here against the Jags, particularly on offense and defense as well. And I'll kind of stop there and let you pick up and kind of share your observations.
No, the response in the first half was dominant on both sides of the football. Justin Herbert looked like himself, and I know Coach Lombardi talked about the fact that he didn't really know how that game was going to go with Justin and his ribs in Jacksonville. Justin, and give credit to the offensive line, it makes a world of difference when Corey Linsley's back in there, but what Jamar Sawyer did in his first career start, they kept Justin clean all day, threw for 340 yards. We talked about the defense generating turnovers. They did it at the most opportune times, setting the tone at the beginning. Nas, that was his second career interception, Money. Feels like he should have had 10 of them by this point. And then Bryce Callahan to close it. So I thought the defense kind of bookended it correctly. The offense, Gerald Everett is becoming maybe the second weapon in the passing attack behind Mike Williams with Keenan Allen out. And I thought Gerald's had a really nice first quarter of the season. We saw Austin break loose finally, 3 total touchdowns in this game. The second halves, though, I think are concerning. They've been outscored in every single second half, Money, 76-31 on the year. So it's not like it's just one game. This has happened in all 4 games where the other team has gotten a leg up on them in the second half. So that's a little bit concerning. Justin has the most passing yards through the first 4 games, despite losing Keenan Allen in game 1 and fracturing his ribs in game 2. So I think that's pretty remarkable. But they're still the worst rushing team in football. And you saw Austin get loose a little bit. All that said, it was still just 3.7 yards per pop. So they need to figure out the running game. I think, and you can.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to jump in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, just because, and man, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but you point to 3 yards per pop. Austin was 4.6. Josh was 3.8. I don't get it. I don't quite understand why Sony is kind of continuing to get these carries. You know, he got 6 to Josh's 4. And if you go through Sony Michel's game logs, he's just struggling to run the ball. I mean, there's no other way to.
Did Josh touch the football in the second half, Matt?
Josh did not touch the football in the second half.
And he was running well in the first half.
Let's just go through his game log. 7 carries, 12 yards, 1.7 per against the Raiders. 4 carries, 13 yards, 3.3. Had the 5 for 22 against the Jags, which is 4-4. But still, I mean, it's 22 yards. And then 6 for 11, 1.8. His long is 6.784. Those are his long runs. I know Coach said that, that it was the series of plays that called for Sony to be in there instead of Josh. I wouldn't run him. Then pick a different set of plays until they figure out what's going on with Sony. And if he's just not comfortable in the offense, if he's not seeing where he's supposed to go or, what holes he's supposed to find or what blocks he's supposed to follow, that's one thing I just don't get. And I think that's what's dragging. Clearly, that's what's dragging the total down. Again, Justin, it says, had 4 carries for -5 yards. That doesn't help with your total. Like, for me, the best thing about that running game this week was 13 for 60. Austin Ekeler is a 4.6 yards per carry career running back, and he was 4.6 in there when all those games prior he was in the 2s. So that's the most important thing to me. I think they just got to figure out, what are we doing with Sony, and why are we doing it, and do we continue to do it, or do we need to find things that are better for him to be more successful, because you're just off schedule. You hand him the ball, and you're immediately off schedule.
You take out Justin's kneel downs, they were 3.7, I think 3.1 with those. So you take those out, and I agree with you. I think if you look at Austin's numbers, that's what we ultimately want to see. You want to see Austin get going because he's such a weapon for Justin. If he runs the ball the way he did on Sunday, we know what he is as a pass catcher. Justin Herbert through 4 weeks, 1,250 yards through the air, top passer, but is that good ultimately in terms of the team in winning ball games? I say no. I say that those numbers, if they went down a little bit and the running game got going, especially in the second half, money, and you can chew clock and you can kind of dominate and play from ahead and have a running game to complement Justin, I ultimately think that's where the Chargers are going to kind of vault themselves into contenders, is making this offense much more balanced, because the 32nd in the NFL in rushing. I think through the first 4 games you can evaluate how to get better, but it can't be like that for long.
Yeah, I'm just going, and again, I apologize for those that are watching this and have to watch my eyes dart over, but I've got 2 computers, one for the camera and then one for all the stats so I can see it, Chris. But, so let's just go through that second half, right? They're up 27-7. And on the game, DJ says in that opening, because they have they defer, they win the coin toss, they defer, they get the opening possession of the second half. And DJ says, look, they score a touchdown here, it's 34-7, it's over. Yeah. It's over. There's no energy in here. The Texans will essentially wave the white flag. The crowd will, which is already checked out, will be completely checked out at that point, and you just cruise to victory. It's a 3-and-out, and it's a drop pass by Everett. Justin hit him, he dropped it. Otherwise you extend that drive, and then who knows, maybe you get rolling. Austin Eckler's out there. His first carry goes for 4 yards. His second one goes for 2. So now you're in a 3rd and manageable, 3rd and 4, and they had the play called, and Everett just dropped the pass. The next one is kind of what I'm getting to. 1st and 10, Sony Michel carry, no gain. 2nd and 10, Herbert passes to Sony. He gets the 9 yards there, and then Sony carries for a yard to get the first down. Great, and that's what Lombardi's talking about with the yards per carry. Well, remember, some of these are shorts, and they're successful. But then you've got Sony left tackle for 1 yard, and it's just like that's what I'm talking about. You get off schedule, and then your 3rd and 5 pass is incomplete to Mike Williams, and you're punting again. And those are the series that we're talking about in the 3rd quarter, and you got back-to-back punts. And that's where you got the one-play touchdown from from Houston on that one. And then they get another touchdown after another punt. It's just that's – and again, who do you think was running the ball on that next punt? Again, it was Sony. And it's I can't quite figure it out. That's what I'm trying to get to the bottom. Again, I'm not trying to pick on Sony. I'm saying, look, I know he's a good back. There's a reason why they signed him. There's a reason why the guy's Super Bowl champion. I'm just trying to figure out how to make it work. Like that's my main concern in that third quarter.
That Georgia connection, Chubb and Michelle could be on the field on Sunday. They were devastated against Georgia, and I think it's just a matter of trying to figure out really how to get this going. The running back 2 position was an issue last year, Money, and it seems like it still is an issue. But it seems like they can turn it around. They have the guys to turn it around. We still haven't mentioned Isaiah Spiller, who could be somebody that maybe we see sooner than later if this continues. I want to give Mike Williams some credit. These 2 road games, 15 catches, 233 yards, and a touchdown. Mike can't have 1 catch for a touchdown like he did in Jacksonville.
Right.
The passing offense has to run through him. So I thought what he did in Kansas City, he kind of picked up where he left off from Kansas City and Houston, and they're going to need him in Cleveland with Keenan probably not going to give it a go based on what Wednesday's practice report showed us.
Look, the linebackers for Houston are challenged. They're not stopping the run, and they can't cover the pass. And credit Lombardi and Justin and Mike for figuring that out, because there was a soft spot in the middle of the field all game, and Mike found it, and Justin just play the hits, kept going back to it. And then Bandy comes in, gets those 2 big catches along the left sideline. It's like there were soft spots all over the field. Now, probably not going to see you're not going to see that against Cleveland. Yes, their secondary has been challenged, and look, this game, is going to look dramatically different based on what the injury report looks like. Clowney is still not practicing as of the moment we do this podcast. That may change. They expect him to be back by the end of the week, maybe in a limited role at practice. Myles Garrett was limited yesterday. So if Garrett and Clowney play, that's completely different for the secondary, because now
Myles is trending that way.
It looks like it, but I think my guess is they're going to play it. It's not a football injury. The guy, they said he freaking had bleeding on his eyeball and a busted up wrist. So it's like, I don't know, how you deal with that from a one-car accident that your Porsche flips over. So I have no idea what kind of condition, he's in. He may be fine football-wise with all of his joints and, his levers, but that doesn't necessarily mean internally he's okay. So that's the thing, is like, this secondary's been victimized all season, and they're really picking on, and Greedy's going to probably come back in this game. He hasn't been out there at all, but, he had a good game against the Chargers last year. You got Greedy, Denzel Ward, and Newsome. That's a good trio. And if you can get the pass rush from Clowney and Myles Garrett, now they don't have to sit out on those islands as long, and they're probably going to be a lot more effective. So, the passing game's going to have to be on point, because you're going to have to get some splash plays against this team because of how aggressive they are.
Yeah, and that's going to have to run through Mike. We mentioned Gerald, Austin. I think those are kind of the top 3 options right now at this point. Josh Palmer only had 1 target and 1 catch, I believe.
Yeah, well, he rolled his ankle, right? I think he rolled his ankle. Yeah.
So he practiced limited. So, what do you remember when he exited the game, Money?
I don't. It's when Bandy essentially came in. He replaced Josh. So that would have been third quarter. So I'm guessing right around, I think Bandy's 2 catches, right? Were Bandy's 2 catches in the third quarter?
I think so. I think he had with 2 for 49. So he two big.
So maybe, you know what? I think his catches were in the second quarter, if I remember right. So he must have left. I'm looking up the play log right now. Let's see. Where are your catches? Michael Bandy. Because they led to touchdowns. Herbert to Williams, Herbert to Ekeler. Yeah, I think they were in the first half, if I'm guessing right. So he must have rolled it pretty early. So that's the reason really for 1 target. But Bandy, listen, he showed us a lot in the preseason. He made 2 big plays in that game versus Houston, so maybe he becomes a factor in the passing game for the Chargers. Well, I think that the key there is that if Josh isn't feeling 100%, that's the luxury that you have, right? It's like, all right, but again, now you're talking about Mike Williams. Obviously, we know Mike whatever, 6'3", giant catch radius. It's hard to go into a game with, 5 foot, what do we think Carter is, 5'9", DeAndre Carter, and 5'10", 5'11", Michael Bandy. You know what I mean? That's where Palmer's 6'2" frame or Keenan's 6'3" frame, comes into play. So that's something to think about. Like, for all the people like, well, just sit Palmer and play Bandy. It's like, yeah, you need that size.
Well, you know what, too? So you got Everett and you got Parham coming back. Donald Parham will be back in this game.
So that's going to help. Yeah, so that's going to help a ton.
In terms of that height.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Browns running game through four weeks. 217 yards
Terrifying.
on the ground versus Carolina. 184 against the Jets. 171 against the Steelers, and 177 at Atlanta. They know exactly who they are. It doesn't matter what defense is going up against them. They say, come and stop Chubb and Hunt.
So I went back and watched, I've watched pretty much a lot of their runs. First down runs, explosive runs, which are runs over 10 yards, touchdown runs, just to kind of put in perspective, what the Cleveland offense is. Nick Chubb has 17 explosive runs this season through 4 games, 17 of at least 10 yards. The Chargers as a team, have 5. He's got 17. Kareem Hunt has 7. So, that's just to kind of think about how the Chargers running game has struggled. That's how good, how successful the Browns rush attack has been. And of all the stats, this is the one that, we always hear about yards after contact and, it's so hard to bring him down. To hell with that. This is the stat that blew my freaking dome. Yards before contact. Before you even get a hat on Nick Chubb, in 4 games, he's averaging 150 yards. I mean, not averaging. He has 150 yards before contact. He is averaging nearly 40 yards per game before you even put a mitt on him. It's impossible. That's, to put it into context, Austin Eckler's yards before contact this year, 28. 28 yards before total in 4 games, an average of 7 yards per game before he has to break a tackle or at least make a man miss. Nick Chubb's got 151. Kareem Hunt has 51 yards before contact on just 46 carries. It's crazy. It is crazy how good Stefanski is at dialing up, and they'll do it out of 11. They'll do it out of 13. They meaning one back, first number is the running backs, second number is the tight end. So they'll do it with 1 tight end and 3 receivers, and you're spread out. And next thing you know, Chubb is freaking hitting a crease for 15 yards between the tackles, or they'll load it up and bring all 3 tight ends out there and say, yeah, you know where we're going. We're coming behind these 2 tight ends and a pulling guard, and there ain't anything you can do. So it's the run defense is going to have to be on point. That's an obvious statement. But I say that just to set up the conversation, and I don't know if you were in the presser, Chris, but it looked like Staley was getting peppered by somebody about the run defense in Houston and how Dameon Pierce had that 75-yard run. And as Coach Staley's just the best, and he never holds his tongue in these things, he just kind of got deep into it. And he said, yeah, Derwin's he went outside. Derwin's supposed to be inside on that. And Nas is supposed to be outside, and they were in the wrong spots, number 1. Number 2, Cove got cleaned out, and he's got to do a better job there. And so, he really, clearly he knows how important this is to make sure you are dialed on your angles, on your run fits, because like we've said in the past, Drew's the best. I don't know if there's a better linebacker at run fits in the league than Tranquil, and he's played exceptional. But I think that's going to go a long way in determining who's active for this game, who's getting into the rotation on the inside of that line, because they do have so many bodies. And Nas just has to, he's got to try to clean that up. His angles have been a little rough here through 4 weeks, and against this team, you're going to have to clean that up.
So the Browns have 491 more rushing yards than the Chargers through 4 games.
Yeah.
491. But it also speaks to identities of teams, right? This is their identity. They run the football. for the Chargers, when you have an elite quarterback like Justin Herbert, that's your identity. Like, we know that Justin throwing the ball is what this offense does best. And so it's almost like contrasting styles here. To your point.
And by the way, they're 2-2. Both teams are 2-2. So it's like, yeah, they're running the hell out of the ball, and they're 2-2. The Chargers are throwing the hell out of the ball, and they're 2-2.
Yeah, there's just different ways to get it done.
Yeah.
James Robinson with that 50-yard touchdown. You mentioned Pierce with the 75-yard touchdown. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a 50-plus yard run late in that game against Kansas City.
That's BS. Travis Kelce held Derwin on that play. But
yeah.
Anyway.
but those explosive plays, Money, especially on the road against Cleveland, you can't let them get up on you with Chubb and Hunt and then try to figure out how to beat them in the second half. It's almost the same formula as Houston, and like, get up on Cleveland early, make them have to throw the football a little bit with Jacoby Brissett. So we talk about hot starts, and every week you want to get off to a hot start, but especially with a team like the Browns. If you can get up 14-0 and make some explosive plays, then you kind of make Cleveland not one-dimensional, because they're still going to try to run the football. But it's harder for them to sustain drives when they're down by 2 or 3 scores.
It's just funny you said it, and I immediately went to 2021 because I remember it. Nick Chubb, 52-yard run, opening drive, third quarter. Cleveland 27, Chargers 13. And we're like, oh, boy. This is just, Nick Chubb has been running roughshod, as has Kareem Hunt, all game long. How are they going to get back into this game? And we know it's one of the greatest regular season games, and we've got so many of those with Herbert, and they scored 28 points in the fourth quarter to win 47.
We haven't even talked
42.
about that game, yeah.
Yeah, it was the Austin Ekeler 4-touchdown game. He had 3 in the fourth quarter. But, so as I'm prepping for the game, and I'm, whenever I do a game, it's if they play the year before, or at least, in the last 2 years, I'll look at that game and save those stats if they're pertinent. Nick Chubb last year versus the Chargers, 21 for 161, 7.7 yards per carry, and a long of 52. Kareem Hunt, 12 for 61, 5.1, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Yeah. It doesn't matter, because obviously this year with Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, it's a different team, in terms of run defense. But I think that game, that's one of those games that led to the signing of Austin Johnson, the signing of Sebastian Joseph Day, and knowing, this is a good team. They're probably going to be in the playoffs pretty regularly with all the talent they have on both sides of the ball. We better have an answer for it. And so I'm anxious to see the answer, because I think, I'm not crazy about the whole, well, if you just take out the one run, we did really well against the run. Well, yeah, but that one run happened, and it scored a touchdown. And that doesn't work, because it got you. So you have to prevent those plays from happening. So it's been a really good run D that has found a way to lose a back at least once a game. And I think they got to be very careful. I'm hoping, and I'm excited to see, because, look, I think, take the Jacksonville game out of it, I think the defense that coach has schemed up this year has been pretty darn impressive, the way that it's worked out. The plan they had for Mahomes, I thought, was perfect. The plan they had for the Raiders worked perfectly. The plan they had for the Texans was great through, 2.5 quarters before the offense completely shut down, and I think the defense got gassed in that second half. So I'm anxious to see what he puts together, what he schemes up to try to figure this thing out, because, man, it's a real, I was about to say the B word, and this is the Chargers pod, so I'll hold back on that. I mean, it's a real bear. It's a real bear to try to figure this thing out.
It's a real bear. These first 4 games have been so weird, Money. Like, this first quarter of the season, you start out by beating the Raiders. You're dominant in the first half against the Chiefs, and, a lot of things go wrong in that second half. Your quarterback gets hurt. You get blown out by Jacksonville. You're decimated by injuries. A lot of people are upset about how they're playing. You come back. You're dominant against the Texans in the first half. Let them back into it. You're 2-2, and we really don't know exactly what this team is yet, but you have so much in front of you. You beat Cleveland. Guess what? Russell Wilson and company come to town on Monday Night Football with a chance to go to 4-2 and 2-1 in the division. So for, I think, as frustrating as maybe these first 4 games have been for fans, it's like, okay, you beat Cleveland, you got Denver, you got Seattle, and then you got your bye, and then you go to Atlanta. So it just goes to show you how long a 17-game season is and how kind of caught up we get week to week. So I think it's sometimes good to reflect on the big picture. And right now, I think in the big picture, Chargers are in a pretty decent spot despite these injuries.
Yeah, for me, like I'm going to take that big picture and make it even wider because I'll just go the AFC as a whole. I mean, just look at it. You've got the Dolphins, Chiefs, and Bills at 3-1. The Dolphins could very easily be 2-2 had they not had that comeback against the Ravens, and the Ravens could be 3-1. That just ridiculous fourth quarter that they had. But point I'm making is there are 8 teams that are 2-2. The Jets are 2-2.
Yeah.
Brady Quinn thought they were going to start the season at 0-9, and that wasn't a ridiculous prediction looking at their schedule. They're 2-2. The Broncos just handed. The Broncos probably shouldn't even be 2-2. Like they certainly weren't a 3-1 team. That's why I was happy to see the Raiders beat them. So you've got, Lamar Jackson, who was playing at an MVP level before the game this past week against the Bills at 2-2. You've got the best record in the AFC last year, Tennessee Titans at 2-2. The defending AFC champion, Cincinnati Bengals at 2-2, along with the Jets and the Jags, who picked in the top 5 of the NFL draft, the Chargers, the Broncos, and we aren't even talking about, the Colts at 1-3, the Raiders at 1-3, the Pats at 1-3, the Steelers at 1. I mean, the Steelers and the Patriots and the Raiders were all in the playoffs last year, and they're all 1-3.
Yeah,
And that's the good news. Like that's what I'm getting at. Like that's the good news. Your record is important, but it's important in context of your division and the conference. So if you're 2-2 and there's 6 teams that are 3-1, and you're like, oh boy, already a game back through the first quarter. No, it's not the case. They are right in the thick of everything, despite their injuries. And like you said, it's an opportunity. And even if they don't win this game and they go 2-3, I mean, like, look, the Browns, and I'm going to do an interview with them today. And as I was prepping for it, I'm reading a bunch of Browns stuff. They're treating this like a must-win game after dropping that game in Atlanta because they're like, look, this team should be at least 3-1 after the weird ending against the game against the Jets. And you can make a case at 4-0.
Carolina, week 1.
Right, so they beat Carolina.
They lose
Carolina.
To the Jets.
But last week they lose to the Falcons by a field goal because they opted not to let Cade York kick a 61-yarder at one point. Anyway, what I'm getting at is after this, Patriots, Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, Buccaneers. That's what the Browns are staring at. You pointed out the Chargers. It's like, okay, you can stub your toe against the Jags because here's the Texans. Now we're 2-2. Maybe you stub your toe, or maybe it's just not a great matchup for you with the injuries and back-to-back 10 a.m. starts against the Browns. I'm not making excuses, but I'm saying what you can do is then say, okay, you've got the extended week to get the extra day of rest, play the Broncos, back-to-back home games. Now you got Seattle, before your bye, get healthy, and let's see if we can get into that break at 4-3. So I think that's – and again, I just think that's the way the AFC is going to play out this year. I think it's going to be a 9-8. A 9-8 team's going to make the playoffs, maybe 2. I just think the parity in this conference is so great that you don't have to freak out if you're not 11-6.
Yeah, I agree with that. Raiders and Texans, the 2 wins the Chargers have, a combined 1-6-1. We could talk about the playoffs in January, right? But you think about wild card and tiebreakers and things like that. This is one of those games that you can have a tiebreaker against Cleveland if it gets close. The following week against the Broncos, that's one of those games, not only for the division but for a potential wild card. Then you play Seattle. You should have no business losing to Seattle at home. So these next 3 weeks, too, Money, like we go from, 2-2, who are these Chargers, to, man, what an opportunity to get to 5-2 at your bye. Because I think
they're favored.
Yeah,
they're favored
by a point and a half, right?
I think it opened 2.5, so I think it's getting bet down. But odds makers put them at 2.5, so they wanted to get some action on the Browns side of things. And look, the Browns, they've been good. They haven't been great. You know, they've been good. They have not been great. You know, and I think that's what you're going to get, you know, with Jacoby Brissett and Stefanski just trying to keep control of this game. You know, I don't think this is a team with the way it's constructed and the comfort level he has with his quarterback that he wants to throw it all over the yard. So if you can control, and that's what's crazy. Like this is the crazy thing. So the Browns, like, you're a defensive coordinator. You're Brandon Staley, and you're going into this game, and you know the Browns lead the league in explosive runs, and they are last in the league in explosive passes. They are number 1 and number 32. You know that going in.
Yeah.
As every team has known that going in, and yet they still get gashed. All 4 of these teams that they have faced have still gotten gashed by the run game. That's, to me, what's like so intimidating and scary about this matchup. It's like, these are not bad teams that they're playing. You know, the Panthers' defense is good. It's not great, but it's pretty darn good. You know, the Jets' defense is not, but the Falcons' defense is not. But what I'm getting at is, like, you know, you can scheme to try to slow down this rush attack, and it still doesn't matter because you don't have to be afraid of the deep pass. So you can have 8 in the box every time. It's crazy. Like, that's how good they are and how good Stefanski is at scheming it up and how good these players are. It's a very athletic offensive line. When you look up, you're seeing Jedrick Wills pull from left tackle all the way outside the tackle box on the right side. You're seeing Wyatt Teller move all over the place. Like, these guys move. Their tight ends move. They're you know, like Donovan Peoples-Jones is a big receiver. He's 6'2", 210. He's a willing blocker. Like, it reminds me. It does. It reminds me a lot of, like, a couple years ago when Mike and Keenan were blocking the hell out of guys, and Austin was running over dudes like crazy. Like, it's very reminiscent of that to me, with how willing their tight ends are and their wide receivers are to be part of this offensive scheme that supports the run more than it does the pass.
The fact that they're last in explosive passing plays, yet they still have David Njoku and Amari Cooper. So, like, that's the only thing that I think I would be a little bit wary of, is that, yeah, you got to sell out to stop Chubb and Hunt. But Amari Cooper has a proven track record in this league. David Njoku had some pretty big explosive plays against the Chargers last year, too.
Yeah, like 70 yards. I think it's his career long. It was like 71 yards.
Yeah. So, listen, Cleveland's a good team.
I would just rather get beat that way, Chris. Like, to me,
I agree
it's like,
with
you know what? All right, if we're going to put the ball in Jacoby Brissett's hand and have him rely on his receivers, great. Let's see it. You know, that's just kind of the way I would approach it. If you can beat us that way, good on you. You know, let's see you do it. So I just think that's the way you have to approach it, because to me, if you try to keep it balanced, you're gonna get gashed.
DJ just did a film room for the Chargers, breaking down Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's a monster.
He's a freaking missile.
And Jamari Sawyer's first game, and obviously he had a great pass blocking grade, but DJ broke down 4 running plays. So I didn't get to talk to you about Jamari, but just the fact that he got a game ball going in for Rashawn, and you know what a teammate Rashawn is, man. You know the character of him to get Jamari ready for that game.
Yeah,
and
was on the sideline the whole game.
Every step of the way, man. I felt bad because that was Rashawn's homecoming too. You know, he going back to Houston, but he helped Jamari get ready for that game, and it was a cool sight in the locker room. Yeah,
I'll tell you, I'm sure DJ pulled up the play. I'm guessing, or you know what, that might have been a pass set, so maybe he didn't break it down. But there was one where Jamari took on 2 dudes, wrecked them both. Ended up helping out inside. I think Matt and Corey crashed inside. Jamari had the outside wide rusher, shoves him down, and then notices there's someone on a stunt coming to the left of Filer, gets his hand on him, shoves him back, and I think that was a completion to the middle of the field, I want to say, to Ekeler, who had or maybe Michelle, that had come around, if I remember right. So, yeah, look, played great, you know, and DJ, you know, who for people that don't know, I assume they all know, but for DJ, who does, you know, he's the best draft analyst out there, and, you know, he made a great point. He's like, so many people ignore strength, you know, and ignore, like that. Like Jamari, yes, are his measurables. He's 6'3". There's not a lot of he's probably 6'2" and change. There's not a lot of tackles out there that are that height, so people get caught up like, well, you're gonna have to kick him inside the guard, and is he athletic enough? And it's like, hey, look, he's got long arms and he is strong as a freaking ox. And as DJ said, once he anchors, you're not moving him. So as long as he can get to you, he's got you. And I think we saw that, with Hughes being with Jerry, who's still a very good pass rusher, had 4 sacks coming into that one. But, he's in his 13th year. He's not the explosive Jerry Hughes that he was. It worked out. Now, if Myles Garrett plays, okay, let's figure this out. And you know what? Credit Joe Lombardi. Almost everything was going to the right. All of the rollouts were to the right, so you were helping him out, give him a little bit more of a runway to make sure there weren't any pressures. But, yeah, I think you come out, you watch the film, and Jamari did great. He played he was not fooled by stunts or twists. And, again, once he got his hands on a player, it was over. And that was Rashawn. Like, once he gets his hand, you're not getting by him. It's just not happening. So if that holds, it completely changes the outlook of the season, if that holds. If Jamari can continue to perform at that level, I'm not saying he's going to perform at a zero-pressure level the rest of the season, but if he can perform at a solid level, man, you want to talk about really changing the trajectory of your season. And just kind of building on that real quick, Chris, to the loss of Joey Bosa and how do you overcome that, I thought it was interesting that instead of focusing on, okay, we got to make sure we get some stuff for Rumpf or we got to get stuff for Van Noy, instead, so much of the design was on the interior of the line. It was all about Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, Jerry Tillery.
Great point.
Those guys that's where the secondary pass rush came from, with Bosa gone. Mack wrecked the game. He completely wrecked the game on the outside. He was fantastic.
Plus that 4th and 1 that Mack had too.
He just tossed a dude, and next thing you know, he's right in Davis Mills' face. I mean, it was. Now this is one of the best offensive lines in the league. It might be the best offensive line in the league. It's in the conversation. You just go the tackles. Wills is very, very good. I think Conklin is on maybe has already hit his peak and is on the downside, but he's still a really good right tackle. Batonio and Teller are really good guards. Like it's a really Posic's in there because Nick got hurt, but it's a really good line, and it's going to be tough. Good news is quarterback doesn't really want to throw it, so figure out how to scheme it up and stop the run.
Yeah, if Myles Garrett goes, Rashawn at least has experience against him, and whatever tips he can give Jamari, I'm sure Jamari will take them gladly. As we put a bow on this, Money, keys to the game, I think we're in agreement. You got to stop the run game.
At least slow it down.
Yeah, you got to slow it down. You got to keep Garrett and/or Clowney off of Justin Herbert. And, the third key for me is find a way to dominate the second half of this game for the first time this year. I don't know if there's another key that stands out to you. I think we're in agreement those first two. But what's maybe that third X factor that could lead to the Chargers' third win of the year?
Well, I think there's two, and I think it depends on who plays. If Mike Williams, if Myles Garrett and Clowney play, you've got to get them on their heels. We talked about this going into the game last week. You need downfield throws. Even if they're not completions, you need to make sure they're on their heels. So, you cannot have that defense just not worrying about the top getting taken off, because Herbert can do it better than probably almost anyone in the league. So take the top off. Get the play action working. You saw it. They identified it. The Texans were terrible on play action defensively. They bit and crashed every time, and all of those routes were open, in the flats and on the crossers, the stick routes, all of those. So that's got to work. If Garrett and Clowney play, you're going to have to try to get them thinking, as opposed to just pinning their ears back and coming flying, knowing that there's nothing downfield. If they don't play, I think the more interesting approach is let's be balanced and let's milk some clock. Let's try to keep our defense fresh, because these offensive linemen are going to beat the hell out of them on every single snap because of how they run block.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately why coaches love that 4-minute drill and they want to be able to run the ball because that's how you wear a defense down every single snap. You're not pass setting and moving backwards. You're engaging and pushing forwards, and you're bringing the fight to the defense, and that's going to wear them down because now you've got this collision as opposed to, I'm coming and I'm just pass setting and trying to redirect you. You're not using as much of your energy, and that's what this team does, is they bring the fight to you. So if you can get a couple of those explosive plays and get this team off schedule, get up 14-0. The Falcons got an early turnover. And they cashed it in, and they jumped them. I think it was 10-0. They jumped them early, and that kind of got them off track a little bit. And I think that's what you got to do.
They had 7 completions in that game, right?
Yeah.
Mario had 7 completions.
7. That's it. So that's what you got to do, right? Try to get this team off schedule so they can't just run 4-minute the entire game.
Hey, this is going to be a fun venue. We were there in 2018, October fall football in Cleveland. It's perfect. It's perfect.
It's better than January winter football, that's for sure.
It is. Hey, Chargers with a chance to get above 500, get to 3-2. We'll see you next Thursday. Enjoy the game. For Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly.